There are people within every local church that would absolutely amplify and make any conflict much worse than it has to be.
Rather than using the church as a court of law to solve the issues, let's see the church as a resource.
All right, in today's video, we are going over to ANN to speak about one of my least favorite subject of all, church discipline. I would like to put this within the framework of what's going on with Dr. Vine. And I think the timing of this video kind of confirms that.
And he's completely honest.
Administrative leave / termination of Pastor Ron Kelly might also be a good reason why this video has been released. This is my opinion. You don't have to believe me.
And I always tell it like it is.
But let's move on to speak a little bit about that. Church discipline is one of those subjects that is in the Bible. It has happened. Every now and then, pastors have to step up and do that. I've been in places where I had to do some of that. It's not one of those happy things. Okay, so they're discussing this matter now. So we're going to take it in, kind of place it in the framework of what's happening with Pastor Ron Kelly and as well as Dr. Vine to see some things we can learn. Again, this is part 1. There's going to be a part 2 where they go deeper into the church manual to explain what's going on. This is Anthony Kent. Let's have an introduction so you better understand the credibility and the work of this man.
Welcome to ANN In Depth. Today, we will address church discipline. Almost an oxymoron. If a church is supposed to love, why is there discipline in the first place? And to help us with this discussion, Pastor Anthony Kent. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks,
to
Sam.
ANN In Depth.
Thank you.
First of all, what do you do? How do you serve the church?
I'm one of the associates in the Ministerial Association at the General Conference. My role is to support pastors with professional growth, continuing education, and also our elders, deacons, deaconesses. And I can think of no more important people than our pastors, our elders, deacons, and deaconesses.
All right, so we're going to move to 4 minutes in, and there is going to be the biblical reason for discipline here that is going to be explained by Pastor Anthony Kent. And he's going to somewhat address just this long process of looking for ways to somewhat gain the member, bring them back to Christ and everything. You don't just slap and lay down the heavy hand of the law because a person has done something wrong or said something wrong, if you know what I mean. So listen a little bit more now.
Why are you doing that? Why not just let it go? And I've pondered on this for a long time. No one would like to be part of a group of people that proclaim one thing, that say one thing, is the harmony that you talked about. This is what we believe. We believe in integrity. But then, here is a member who is well known for lying and stealing, and the whole community knows that his, let's say, car dealership, they would steal and they would lie to you about their cars. There is an incongruence between those two realities. How can you say that this is what you believe, but your members and the people that are part of your body are openly against that and publicly against that, or at least live out differently from that? And that is not a good witness to the community. So talk to me about this, the perception that we leave with people. And it's not just about perception, it's about the reality of being openly against the biblical standards that we adhere to and that we profess.
Well, first and foremost, church discipline is not just about taking somebody's name off the membership roll. There's a lot in the process to begin with, and you're familiar with it.
Sure.
That's the ultimate. There's censorship, which normally takes place before the ultimate act of discipline, typically, where a person is censured And that's like a period of probation. It's a period of grace. It's a period of, hey, let's just think about what's happening here, all parties concerned, for a period of a month to 12 months, if we go by the church manual. So these are all part of the process. And during that process, before the ultimate church board, church business meeting takes that act of voting somebody out of membership, there's been an enormous amount of visitation. There's been an enormous amount of praying, of wrestling, of earnestly trying to reconcile with somebody what their behaviour is and what the ideal of Christianity is. So it is a long process. Yes, some people can see it as a blunt instrument, but before that ultimate instrument is applied, there should be an enormous amount of tender, nurturing, pastoral care on the part of the body of the church.
This is massive what Pastor Anthony Kent just shared here, right? The whole purpose of discipline is not to come down with the heavy hand and strike hard at the rebel, right? Or the individual. Keep in mind, despite the fact they might be in the wrong, they have reasons for their, should I say, their position, what they're doing, right? You need to get to the root of why it's happening. That takes time and effort. That takes relationship. That takes discussion. That takes dialogues. That takes love. It takes long suffering. It's a long process. So if you were to apply that element to the Pastor Ron Kelly and the Dr. Vine situation, right, and apply that element, how much of that was really carried out? Now, not so much by conference leadership. How much of that was really carried out by church leadership? Because if you notice, this is an issue that has to do with membership as well as the church. So the member in the church and the board members, we're not putting conference in this yet, right? It's not in the equation. They can come in later on to assist so much, not to make decisions in particular, despite the membership position. This is something that really we have to understand. And they're not saying that. And I think this video is a fair video. Although we know the timing is saying something, right?
What are you saying?
They're not calling any names, but you and I are smart people. We can pick up on the timing. But I will say what is being discussed is fair, is honest, is true from both a Bible and also church bylaws and principles that are also aligned in the manual. So that's another aspect. I would like to move on now to speak about censorship, right? Why is censorship such a vital thing? Why, when could it be applied? Why do I stand against it? And at least hearing, first of all, what they have to say about it. And then we can move on to say something else. Let's keep watching.
This was investigating. We came to the church board and said, we now need to protect them from being exposed. So let's add a censorship to this. And that's the point about censorship in my estimation. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Or I would like you to talk about that. Censorship is when there are questions on someone or someone has done something bad, something against the standards of the Bible that is egregious to the community. We need to protect that person because every time they appear serving or appear in front or do something, people remember what they've done. So let's protect them by saying, hey, take 6 months off, take 3 months in quiet reflection and wait until this calms down so people can grieve. They trusted you. You act against their trust. Allow yourself some time off, and then you can come back to ministry at some point. You can come back to normality later. And most people with that approach are very happy. In my experience.
So you have an idea of why censorship is part of discipline here in the church. Sometimes it has to be applied. I've dealt with it. I think I've been censored several times. But I tell you what, many times when I got censored in the church, I wasn't even told. The cases that I've dealt with was like, I was more ostracized, not censored. In some cases, it was fair. At the times that I was censored, I would say there were some cases that I would say I agreed with it. But there were times that I'm like, it was more a disagreement between one man or in leadership, right? Who has the authority and the power to make certain decision just censored. So we can go into a whole, let me not make this about me. Okay, but the thing is, I've seen it done in ways that are beneficial, and I've seen it done in ways that could be very detrimental to the church, and also in places where I can see some are exercising authority just to get what they want and control certain members that they don't agree with their position and views on certain things. So it's one of those things that had to be properly used as well. So if you were to put this in the situation with Dr. Vine, do you think Dr. Vine's censorship by Audioverse, by Stephen Bower on their symposium, and also just all these different places who just removed Dr. Vine, right? From speaking from the pulpits, the Michigan Conference says he's not supposed to have a place in our pulpits anymore. That level of censorship here, it is an act of discipline. It is part of the discipline. Do you think that was fair? That's what I would like to ask and hear from you. Okay, so let's keep going.
But one of the positives that came out of the censorship experience that I was involved in was that the person that went through the process certainly grew from it, and grew in a wonderful way, which even surpassed my very best expectations. This person is now an ordained Seventh-day Adventist pastor.
Wow.
So
Redemption through discipline.
exactly,
Church discipline.
exactly. And at the time, this individual wasn't particularly
Happy. I'm sure.
and it was a wake-up call. It wasn't something that I rushed into. It wasn't something that I was eager to do. But I sensed that it was the right thing to do. And it wasn't just me. It was a recommendation of the church board, and also a vote of the whole of the local congregation. The church had a business meeting. So they obviously saw the potential of this young person. They didn't want to crush them, but they just thought this course that they're on cannot continue, and there is some discipling that needs to take place in a redemptive way. And praise God.
In this part of the video, they did say we're not going to speak about what's in the church manual yet. There's going to be a part 2 where they will be addressed. It's actually 14 different steps, reasons in the church manual, I should say, that tells you why discipline must take place when an individual is violating these principles.
It's stressful.
As it should be, Anthony. You know, if you love enough,
Yeah.
right? That's what you would experience at home with a child. A loving parent would not allow the child to continue in a deadly behavior without any notice. You know, when teenagers are experimenting with alcohol or smoking or drugs or pornography or any other behavior that will bring destruction, if a parent does not have that conversation, does not have the courage to address the issue, and just lets it go, that's not love.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the very opposite of
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
You need to have a lot of love to have those conversations.
Yeah. And, you know, like, it's hard not to refer to the examples in the church manual, but
Anyway, I'm going to link this video so that you get a full context. I think it's a really beautiful discussion that's going on here. There's some really good principles laid out, at least reasons both in the Bible and Old Testament why discipline is necessary and how it is to be applied today. And they share some personal life experiences with members as well, where things need to take place. Now, the question is yet to be asked. Although No name was called. I'm making my personal application of this thing. Okay. We know Dr. Vine, Ron Kelly situation, the discipline that has taken place. Ron Kelly administrative leave. Dr. Vine is being banned, censored, right? Because he said a statement in a video where he called for a parachurch movement. Okay, he called for the tithes to be redirected to conferences that are faithful to scriptures, and we know that created a serious backlash from many leadership, and a lot of people responded. Now, here's the question: is this what the church manual is telling us to do about an individual who is behaving in this way? So, if you go to the church manual, you can get a copy of it online. I can link this in the description below. This is the 2022. The revised version. So it talks about reasons for discipline. There's a whole other process that we go through here. It's not just like the individual does something wrong and we just strike them down. It gives you some really good principles that I will say for those of us who are in church leadership and those of us who are in school and learning, you need to be familiar with this. You need to know what these things are. You need to understand how they are to be applied. You need to make reference to these passages and stuff like that so that you can better make sense of how you deal with certain issues happening in the church. But now when you look at the reasons quickly, which they did not go through these reasons today, but if you were to look at the reasons, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them, there are 14 of them outlined in the church manual. And I want people to go through them and ask me the question, do you believe these 14 reasons, do you believe in any way that these reasons are in any way being violated by either Dr. Vine or Ron Kelly? And if you were to, can you point out to me which one of those 14 reasons that they have violated? Which one of those 14 reasons that you will say clearly there has been a violation of, and where and how was it violated? Would you also say, and if you were to apply this, how many other individuals would you place under the same order? How many other violation has been taking place in the church would you also condemn by these principles as well? These are things I would like to know, and I'm not making a definite judgment at this time, but I want you to notice another thing that's very, very crucial in the church manual. The process of discipline, we are told it has to be done by voting, right? A vote of censure, a vote to remove the membership. There has to be a voting process that goes on before the individual is either censored, is either removed from membership. There has to be a voting process that goes on in the church. And that voting is not supposed to be done by those in authority, not conference leadership, although the church must work in concession with the conference, but the conference itself cannot just come in and lay the heavy hand of the law. When Pastor Mark Howard came and, clearly articulated why, Ron Kelly has been terminated, right? Administrative leave. And also Dr. Vine has been banned. He pretty much tells you, no, this is the conference coming in and do what Ron Kelly has failed to do, right? And he spelled it out for you.
The conference who hired the pastor to feed and protect that flock had to step in and do the job the pastor refused to do. So the Michigan Conference leadership had to step in and ban this elder from Michigan pulpits, which is perfectly within their rights and responsibilities as a conference.
Yeah, so he spelled it out. And again, we all knew that's what the reasons were, right? We all knew that, right? So why is this wrong? Well, it violates the church manual as well. The issue is that, and I think my man really articulated this matter well. This is what he refers to. Dr. Olatunji said it.
Maybe there's a silver bullet that, bam, this thing is gonna Kelly's Ron Kelly is the villain, and Conrad Vine is the sub-villain. But I still have not seen it. What this looks like, I'm not saying what it is. What this looks like is what Ellen White says. It's called high-handed power. The high-handed power that has been developed as though positionists made men gods makes me afraid. and ought to cause fear. It is a curse wherever and by whomever it is exercised. This lording it over God's heritage will create such a disgust of man's jurisdiction. Not that I'm in favor of this now, I'm not in favor of this, that a state of insubordination will result. So what happens is this right here. I'm seeing comments saying this is going to make the situation worse. It's going to add more fuel to the fire and stuff like that. And I have to agree with it because the way that looking at the video, and maybe one day this week or next week, I'll just do a full blown
Yeah, I plan on getting together with Dr. O sometime next week or so and go through the video that Mark Howard has put out, and we gonna examine the whole thing, milk it, and even examine the church manual to see what he was saying, even some of the quotations that were said in that video as well from Ellen White. We're gonna even examine these quotations in the proper context. So we're gonna comb through this matter and carefully examine what's going on so that we can better make sense of this. This has to be done so that we can better understand what's happening here. So going back to the idea of discipline, church discipline, it is significant, it is necessary, but sometimes it is abused. Sometimes it is abused, sometimes it is overused, and sometimes it is also double standard. There's times when people should be disciplined, they are overlooked, and there's times certain people, when they say what they ought not to say, or they touch the wrong nerves, or they step on the wrong toes, then we hear discipline being put to use. And I will agree with Dr. O on this one. There has been the high-handed power that has been used in this case. And this is my perspective. You don't have to agree. You can disagree, and that's perfectly fine. But this is where I stand at this moment. I would like to hear from you. Do you believe Dr. Vine or Ryan Kelly, and there's been many others, there's been other collateral damage as well. Do you think these men has been dealt with in the right way? Yes or no? I'm going to put a poll underneath this video. Let's have the conversation. Let's make it happen. Until next time, have a good one.